Today we will discuss the history of the Roman Empire. In the first half of the 4th century AD, Constantine founded the city of Constantinople in 326 and immediately transferred the capital from ancient Rome to the new Rome on the banks of the Bosphorus. Take a look at the map. You will see that the city of Constantinople stands on the edge of Europe, with the vast continent of Asia in front of it. This city is like the junction of two continents. With this city as its center, trade routes by land and water spread out in all directions. The location of this city is excellent for the city and the capital. Constantine liked the place very well. But just as the ancient city of Rome was quite far from Asia Minor and the countries of the East, so too this new capital was quite far from the countries of the West, such as Britain.
The arrangement was that two emperors would rule in two places, one in Rome and one in Constantinople. This arrangement worked for some time, but this again divided the empire into two parts, the East and the West. The Western Empire could not survive for long. It could not escape the attacks of what were called barbarian nations. The Goths, Vandals, Huns, etc. attacked Rome one after another, and that led to the fall of the Western Empire. You must have heard the word Hun before. The English used this word repeatedly about the Germans in the last Great War. They wanted to imply that the Germans were a barbarian nation. In fact, no one can keep their heads straight during war. Every nation forgets its education, civilization, and culture, and becomes cruel and barbaric. The Germans, the English, the French, all are equal. All behave like barbarians. Who should I talk about, excluding whom? The words Huns and Vandals have become a byword. They were probably very barbaric and cruel, and would have done a lot of damage. But everything we know about them comes from their enemies, the Romans. How can we say that these things are not biased? In any case, the fact is that the Western Roman Empire collapsed, like a house of cards under the attacks of nations like the Vandals and Huns. Do you know why it was so easy for them? The peasantry of the empire was completely overwhelmed by the pressure of excessive taxes and debts, so they were in favor of some kind of change. Look, even in India these days, the poor farmers have become so devastated by misery that they are also ready for any kind of change. The Roman Empire in the West was destroyed. But despite repeated attacks by nations such as the Huns, Arabs, Turks, etc., the Roman Empire in the East survived for many centuries. This empire maintained its existence continuously for 1100 years. Finally, in 1453 AD, the Ottoman Turks captured Constantinople, and since then it has been under the control of the Turks for 500 years. Another name for Constantinople is Istanbul. The Turks did not stop there. They continued to conquer various countries in Europe and advance to the borders of Vienna. Later, however, they were forced to retreat. They were defeated in the last Great War, and as a result, Constantinople came under the control of the British. For some time, the Sultan of Turkey remained a puppet in the hands of the British. After that, the great leader Mustafa Kemal Pasha emerged. His advent saved the Turkish nation. A republic is now in force in Turkey. The position of Sultan has disappeared. Kemal Pasha is the president of this republic. Constantinople belongs to the Turkish state but is not its capital. The capital of Turkey has been established in Asia Minor, far away from the climate of imperialism at a place called Angora or Ankara. This is the history of 2,000 years. What a series of changes. The founding of the city of Constantinople and the establishment of the capital of the Roman Empire there. Another feat of Constantine is noteworthy. He made Christianity the official or state religion of the empire. By doing this, the form of Christianity changed. Until then, it was persecuted, but now it was considered a completely royal religion. At first, there was a little chaos. There were disputes between different communities, and finally there was a complete separation between the Greek and Latin communities. The main center of the Latin community was in Rome. The Bishop of Rome was the religious leader. Later, the title of Pope was created instead of the bishop. Constantinople was the main center of the Greek community. The Latin community spread to Northern and Western Europe. Over time, these became known as the Roman Catholic community. The Greek group was called the Orthodox or Old Believers community. After the fall of the Roman Empire in the East, Orthodoxy gained dominance in Russia. But since the spread of Bolshevik ideology, no religion has been officially recognized in that country. We are talking about the Roman Empire in the East, but it had no connection with the city of Rome. Even the language was different. The language of Rome was Latin, and Greek was used in the Eastern Roman Empire. There was no major connection with Western Europe, but still this Eastern Empire held on to the word Roman, and the inhabitants were also called Romans. This word had a magic. Rome was no longer the main city of the empire in the later years, but Rome's fame did not diminish. Even the invading barbarian nations looked upon this city with respect. One has to admit the greatness of the name and the ideal. After this, Rome tried to build a new empire, a completely different kind of empire. Peter, a disciple of Jesus, was the first bishop of Rome. Therefore, Rome was a holy land for Christians, and the position of bishop also had a special significance. After the emperor moved to Constantinople, the importance of the bishops increased. There was no one above the bishop in Rome. Moreover, having succeeded Peter, he became the leader of all bishops. Later, he was called the Pope. The office of Pope still exists today. He is the leader of the Roman Catholic community. The cause of the division between the Roman and Greek religions was idolatry. The Roman Catholic community was in favor of the worship of images of great men, especially the image of Mary, the mother of Jesus. But the Orthodox community was completely opposed to it. Rome was under the rule of tribes for several centuries, but they also at times acknowledged the loyalty of the Emperor of Constantinople. Gradually, the power of the bishop as a religious leader increased, and the bishop began to disobey the emperor. Then, when the dispute over the question of idolatry arose, the Pope decided to separate Rome from the Eastern Empire. Many events have already taken place in the history of the world. The emergence of the new religion of Islam in the Arab world. The Arabs have invaded North Africa and Spain, and are starting to attack the heart of Europe. New kingdoms are emerging in Northern and Western Europe. And in the meantime, the Eastern Roman Empire has been devastated by the Arab invasion. The Pope sent for help from a Germanic people of the north called the Franks. As a result, a man named Karl or Charles was crowned emperor in Rome. This created a new empire in Rome, but the name remained the Roman Empire. People did not have the idea that an empire could exist without being Roman. Although Rome had no connection with Charlemagne or Charles the Great, he still took the titles of Imperator, Caesar, and Augustus. Later, the word holy was added to the name of this new empire, Holy Roman Empire. The empire of Christians and the Pope as its religious leader, therefore holy. The power of ideals is immense. A German or Frank from Central Europe became the Emperor of Rome, and the subsequent history of this holy or holy empire is even more strange. This empire practically did not exist. How many changes it had? It disappeared and reappeared from time to time. It was like a ghost empire. It lived on in the minds and imaginations of people with the power of the name Rome and the prestige of the Christian congregation. In reality, it was almost impossible to say that it did not exist. Someone, perhaps Voltaire, said about the Holy Roman Empire that it was something that was neither holy, nor Roman, nor an empire, none of these three. Similarly, while explaining the Indian civil service of our country, someone said that it was neither Indian nor civil, nor a service. Yet this shadowy imaginary Holy Roman Empire continued to exist for almost 1,000 years, of course only in name. During the time of Napoleon, 100 years ago, this empire came to an end completely. People did not notice it. For a long time it did not really exist, so people could not know its end. But the ghost did not leave completely. It only covered itself for a while. Because later the ghost appeared again in other forms, in the form of Kaiser, Tsar, etc. But most of these ghosts were buried in the last Great War 14 years ago.